what are some of the coolest things that you guys have encountered? Duggan, let's start with you.
So the coolest thing, I wrote it down because it literally just happened about 30 minutes ago. I was playing, I hit around level 15, I was just doing this mission, and a boss dropped an item that was a sawn-off shotgun for my pistol slot. And that blew my mind.
That's right. For you, it was kind of like getting a really cool weapon. For me, it was actually a mission where you go into, I think it was a mall, and the flamethrower guys are just torching everything, and the building's on fire.
The Christmas tree, the burning Christmas tree.
You gotta find the money. Turn on the sprinklers, and like you feel this sense of urgency to get through the mission, and like you gotta take out these guys and get the money that has the medical wing stuff that you need. I really, really like that from a technical perspective, and also just like how it made me feel as I was going through the mission.
100%, and that's what getting back to what I was saying before about how the core gameplay loop is always the same, whether be it an event or a mission, but the missions have just enough narrative and just enough different about them, like a burning mall, right, that forces you to go up these levels and like try to get through the fire to find narratively laced objects that normally in an event would just be like pick up the suitcase, you know? So there's just enough narrative sort of coded around the missions that make them feel different, I guess, is the way to put it. I guess, enjoyably different, you know?
Definitely. And for me, like, it's also, like I said in my first review in progress, about some of the early world building that the game does really effectively. So I kind of I'm cheating. I already wrote this that I meant this, but right when you get when you're at Camp Smith, that's the first camp.
The first one? It's I forget what it's called.
The one where you land at?
Yeah.
Camp Hudson?
Yes.
The first camp.
Right.
We'll call it that.
Camp number one.
Yeah.
So when you first come through kind of that first like kind of snaking tunnel of like, you know, quarantine zone kind of area, and then you come out and like the sun's all bright in your face as you come out, and as you come into focus right there on your right, there's a bunch of people standing in front of kind of a makeshift memorial that has like the American flag draped over it and has a bunch of firefighters' helmets on it, and it's like, you know, I'm an older dude. I was a young man during 9/11. You know, I was going to school 25 minutes away from Ground Zero pretty much, and my father was in the city that day. I knew you know, some of my friends were family of firefighters and police officers. Like, it's kind of a bit of like a, you know, it's a little bit of a shameless heartstring pulling, but
emotionally evocative.
But it definitely invested in me immediately. I saw many memorials like that in New York, you know, when I was back home, and so that immediately kind of rooted me emotionally in the world and kind of gave me a sense of like, New York is going through this again, you know, like this kind of a tragedy again, and like there's even little allusions to that on the radio. Like one of the radio personalities at one point says, you know, it's like, hey, you know, everyone, this is our time that we need to come together and not sow fear, but like work together towards things. Like, this is New Yorkers. This is what we've done. And this is what we do. And I was like, ooh, I remember when we did that.
Has that been one of your favorite experiences? That sort of, you know, stab in the heart.
Those little in between. Finding more and more I've played multiplayer games over the last few years. I used to be a primarily single player person. As I've gotten more into multiplayer games over the last couple of years, I continually find myself more impressed with how multiplayer designers find ways to tell stories, even with the fact that most of the action is driven by the players, and that's hard. And I admire it when I see it. So, Overwatch.
Brandon, what about you? What's been your favorite experience?
I mean, I've already touched on the weapons and the power creep and all that, but I think, honestly, my favorite part of the game is just sort of the little details that go into it, the level of detail. Like Vince was saying about, you know, the radio host having very evocative imagery with the things he was saying. Also, just walking through the streets, if you take time to stop and look at it, and I'm not talking about like a Ninja Turtle Easter egg or anything, but like I saw, and I actually have footage of this, and it's kind of silly that this is one of my favorite things, but I saw a crow fight a rat in the middle of the street.
Wow, get out of here.
Yeah, like the crow was like pecking at it, and it would jump on it, and the rat would jump back, and they'd fight and like kind of do this thing for a while.
The rat won, right? It's New York. The rat won.
No, it was a stalemate. It was a draw. Like, they both just went their separate ways, and I was like, all right, I feel like I got my money's worth. But like, just dumb stuff like that, or like walking down the street, you see a couple in the window, or you see a guy in the window looking out. And I turned and looked up with my gun aimed. You know, I looked up, and he saw me aim the gun up and just went, and then dropped down and killed the lights in the room, you know?
Oh, wow.
And it's just like, really cool little stuff like this, or like you fire a shot through the glass and they freak out and drop and kill the lights in the apartment. it's just all this tiny little stuff. Or like, you know, it's awful to say, but like sort of seeing the downfall of New York from the cleaners and the rioters and the Rikers and what they do. Those horrifying CCTV videos that you find everywhere, where you see people run through the subway and the Rikers chase them down and beat them to death, or you see cops, you know, responding to a missing vehicle and then the Rikers, you know, shoot them. Like it just these really, really stark, bleak moments that are also reinforced by just sort of the stuff you find in the environment, like JTF officers, you know, strung up or, you know, splayed open, and like all this really tough stuff. Like the city itself, I think, has a personality to it, and what alleviates some of the repetition that we were all talking about before is really sort of like pulling out the personality from the environment. And I absolute kudos to the dev team that made New York, because it's a beautiful city and it is so full of tiny little details that you might never see them all. You probably never will.
There's definitely a lot to like.